Hello, Night Nation. I'm Trylko from the Sons of UCF, joined by Eric Lopez of the Black and Gold Banneret. Welcome to Around the Kingdom. Elo, hello.
Trace, hello. Coming up on the fastest UCF show out there. We know who UCF's playing in the bowl game. We'll get to see some old friends. Are we excited about that? We'll discuss that and more, Trace. Exciting to see some old friends, and we have the resources to see some of them.
Resources. That's today's word. Before we get going, let's welcome in the third member of our team, Adam Eaton from the Sons of UCF, who watches the clock, keeps us on our toes. Adam, hello.
Well, it's going to be busier tonight. Hello, Trace. Hello, Eric, because I also have to now follow the transfer portal. So a lot of stuff I got to keep moving back here. I will keep you updated if anybody hops in the portal in the next 30 minutes during the fastest show in the whole UCF land.
All right. Thank you, Adam. We'll check back in with you. Elo, you mentioned it off the top. It's official. UCF versus Duke. Oh, that was about an hour on Sunday. Not a good day for Brett McMurphy, was it? He kept breaking news that kept changing all afternoon. UCF settling with Georgia Tech. It was crazy, wasn't it? The delay from the ACC and the trickle-down effect of the decision to snub Florida State.
Well, some would argue that Sunday, was a very bizarre day in the sport. Not sure it was a real positive day in the sport, but you mentioned the UCF situation. I don't think we've ever seen that before. Like, Brett McMurphy is usually dead on figuring out where this matchup is, but all of a sudden it was UCF and Duke, and I'll give you full reaction. I was livid. I'm like, what is this? A rematch of a bowl game? Next thing I know, about an hour later, oh, well, maybe it's a trade, which Syracuse might play UCF. Like, what, trades? Next thing we know, we get Georgia Tech out of this. I don't know when transactions, and I know there's the hot stove league going on in baseball at the winter meetings. I didn't know that included bowl games, Trace.
Yeah, it was chaotic and confusing. It didn't make a lot of sense when you heard the Duke announcement, right? I mean, the fan base, who was excited about that? And then to see that change, I just like how even the Big 12 on its social media was releasing, here's the announcement. UCF versus pull that down. I believe twice they deleted announcements about this game before, of course, settling in on Georgia Tech. I asked on my social media, on my Twitter account, what do you think of this bowl game? Hey, overwhelmingly, 57% of respondents say they like it, 13% say they love it, 28% lukewarm, but only a few said they didn't like it at all. So I guess from that standpoint, palatable to the fan base.
Well, what would that poll look like if they stuck with Duke, though? Who again doesn't have a coach, doesn't have a quarterback. I don't think that percentages would be very deal there. By the way, at least now we know that television is heavily involved in bowl games. Terry Mohajir had nothing to do with this. Nobody at UCF had anything to do with this. This was all TV created. I don't know if you've heard, but TV is kind of very influential in college football. But we do end up with UCF at the Gasparilla Bowl, Trace. Tell me, are you excited? Do you think this is a good matchup for UCF as they take on old buddy Brett Key, head coach at Georgia Tech, former Knight? There's some storylines here. They're pretty interesting.
There are some storylines. I certainly prefer it to the Duke matchup. And when you think about the regular season schedule, Gus Malzahn mentioned it in his Tuesday availability about nice to play somewhere a bus ride away. The majority of the fan base is in Central Florida, across the state of Florida. So it's a more accessible game than Lubbock and Lawrence and Manhattan, Kansas, where while there were some traveling fan base, that was good for those games, most UCF fans didn't see them play on the road at all. So they have that opportunity. Familiar venue. They've had success. What is it? 5 straight years, either beating the Cows or winning these or playing in these Gasparilla Bowls. They beat the Gators there, right? They are familiar. They are successful in that stadium, and it gives the greatest opportunity for the fans to attend.
And you get an interesting matchup, right? Because think of the projections we were looking at. I was looking at UCF Troy, UCF Toledo. I even wrote about it last. Yeah, Toledo powerhouse program there, Coach Candle. I mean, there was concern. I thought for UCF to get a quality, marquee game, or at least a game against a program you're relevant, you would have to go out of state. They didn't have to do that. And you do have storylines with the Brent Key factor, obviously George O'Leary and the connections there. So you actually, all things considering how UCF is 6-6, I don't think you could have done much better than this bowl game and the location and the opponent here, Trace.
For most fans, right, it doesn't involve costly travel, hotel nights. It comes right around the holidays, but you could drive in, you could drive out. favorable matchup for UCF. UCF already sold out of its ticket allotment. The game's selling out, probably not going to be a thing with 65,000 seat stadium, but UCF sells out its initial allotment. So there are a lot of wins for UCF in this bowl.
I agree. We'll see. There were some positives, but there's also some negatives, Trace, though, right?
Well, Georgia Tech likes to run the ball. They have two guys that average more than 6 yards per carry, and I'm not entirely sure UCF's performance against Oklahoma State is the new UCF rush defense. So, and look at what they did over the course of their season. They surprised some teams, and then they, head-shaking losses. So up and down year, familiarity with these two teams. They played recently, right? So even though that Duke game would have been a direct bowl rematch, it's not like it has been a long time since UCF played Georgia Tech. So from that regard, I don't know. The initial surveys of these things, Yahoo.com says the 35th best bowl, and CBS Sports has it 28th. So on paper, maybe not the most exciting game on the planet.
Well, because it's 2 6-6 teams. What are you expecting? I mean, this is, neither team has anything to write home about. I know everybody's going to blow this out of proportion and say this is such a great matchup. It really is. It's two teams very fortunate to be in bowl games. We'll see I think both fan bases will be pleased, but does anybody really care nationally in this game? I don't know. It's on a Friday night as well. It's going to be tough television. It's going up against WWE SmackDown, which dominates Friday night. Shout out to Brian W. Peterson, fellow CM Punk fan there. I just had to say that. But I don't know if this is not going to come anywhere close to drawing what Florida UCF did, which I thought had more intrigue, more cachet with Gus against the SEC. Who really cares? And the Brent Key storyline, outside of diehard O'Leary fans.
That's a local storyline.
Right.
That's not it. Nobody knows that story. And how much you want to bet ESPN doesn't even root that story out about him being there all night in the football offices? I mean, do you think we'll even hear that story?
No, and that's the problem. Nobody's going to ask the real questions that have to be asked. Everybody's just going to talk about how great this, it's great to play UCF and all that stuff. And my wife went to school there. Great. Nobody cares. Nobody talks about the past there. I think there's a lot of negatives. And how many of these players on both sides are really going to stick around and play? We'll see.
Well, let's talk about it from the buzz standpoint. You mentioned it there earlier. Is it a big draw? Is it a TV draw? You're the one that studies the TV ratings.
Yeah. Well, remember last year, Georgia Tech, UCF played on ESPNU. You know what it drew? 107,000 viewers. It was one of the least viewed UCF games. Now, obviously, it's going to draw way better than that. I think it'll draw about 1.5 million, 2 million. But as I mentioned, it will not beat, for example, WWE SmackDown Friday night. People go out on Friday night. I do think they will draw well in person. I don't think it will be a sellout or draw as big as the Florida UCF attendance. But I do think it will be a well-attended bowl game. But honestly, Trace, what is the point of this game? If UCF loses or wins, does it matter? No, seriously, and I don't think there's no cliffhanger to this. Whereas with UCF Florida, it felt important, right? Like UCF Florida hadn't played in forever, state bragging rights, these schools, the fan bases don't like each other. Does UCF really care about Georgia Tech fans or vice versa? So I don't think there's going to be any buzz for this game.
How much did it really impact the program in 2023, having lost to Duke in the Military Bowl? I asked Coach Malzahn, it's about the extra practices, right? It's about that opportunity to give young guys meaningful reps. But what else difference does it make? I know in our business, for us, I'd rather talk about the team winning the game than losing the game. And it's a long off season for us if they're 6-7. But how consequential is it 7-6? What's your guess on crowd? At this point, more numbers will be released as we get closer. They'll announce more ticket allotments. But not a sellout.
What's the
65,000. No way.
I'll say no way. I'll say 40, maybe 35, 40. I'll go positive. Yeah, I'll go 35, 40.
Yeah, I don't think more than that.
Let me ask you this question. At this point, which of these, how would you rank these three? Bowl games, signing day, portal. I would argue the bowl game's the third most important thing to both fan bases out of this game. Would you agree with that in December?
Sounds like a topic for next week on Around the Kingdom, but the bowl is probably the third most important part right there. All right, Elo, here's the question. Who got the better bowl? Gasparilla, UCF, Georgia Tech, or is it Boca Raton, South Florida against Syracuse. A lot of 6-6 teams in this one.
Yeah, no, I think UCF got the better bowl game. They got a Georgia Tech game. You got storylines there. And you got a coach that's actually still there in the quarterback, something you can't say about Syracuse. Plus, Tampa, Florida, upgrade over Boca Raton, Florida, as far as visiting.
I will say this. I think that there was a needed break from USF, and I think USF's probably happy not to be playing in its home stadium. Hey, they don't win a lot of games there. They may do better on the road. And, there are some fans in the UCF fan base that wanted an easier game against a team without a coach, without a team without a quarterback. I'd rather have a fuller strength team that it be a more quality win should UCF get that win.
Wow, some of the fan base acting like a Power 5 school. All right, we're made it. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, what's the point of playing an interim coach and credit? The UCF-USF game was never going to happen. I thought that was silly nonsense, and I think it's proven that. Because if you lose to Georgia Tech, it doesn't matter, and if you beat Georgia Tech, it doesn't matter. So there you go.
So it doesn't matter. The Doesn't Matter Bowl.
It should be the title sponsor. Yeah.
But who does matter? Adam Eaton. He is back. Time for a silly game.
It is, gentlemen. Before we get there, though, let's talk about our friends at the Sultry Spirit. Gentlemen, it's holiday time. Your holiday parties are going to start ramping up soon. You're going to start going to some of these things. And here's the most important thing people forget about the holiday time. You're often stuck around people that you don't like. The good news is, if you hire the Sultry Spirit, they can mix your party up. They can give you creative cocktails. They can turn your party into something fun where maybe the people you're around, you'll actually enjoy for a little bit. Their bartenders will put creative twists on these cocktails. They'll make you have a good time, even if you don't like the people you're with around the holiday time. So here's what you need to do. Follow them on Instagram at the Sultry Spirit, or give them a call, 941-567-7062. Again, at Sultry Spirit, 941-567-7062. Let them know that you heard about them on Sons of UCF around the kingdom. You'll get 10% off. Plus, you will get a special gift as well, too. So again, holiday time, you need something to liven the party up. Sultry Spirit is the place that you want to go. Give them a call today. They will take care of your party. Gentlemen, silly game time. I got some questions for you. These are just kind of random questions. No gimmick this week. No multiple choice. No true or false. Just random questions. Here we're going to start today with the latest in college football. It's been a rough week for college football. Transfer portal, bowl season, yada yada yada. So each of you have a challenge on these first two questions. So Eric, I'll start with you. Fix the transfer portal by instituting one rule. What one rule would you institute to fix the transfer portal?
I would say you can only enter the transfer portal once in your career.
Okay, one-time portal. Trace, fix the transfer portal. One rule.
Do we have to have it at all? We still have to have it in this question. Can we get rid of it?
Okay, that's a creative twist on a classic cocktail as Sultry Spirit would do. But no, assume it has to stay with you.
We're seeing it. We'll talk about it in a little while, Dylan Gabriel. One time. Enough of this bouncing from school to school. One time.
All right. Trace, I'll start with you on the next one. Fix the college football playoff selection process with one rule.
Well, get rid of the nonsense that unfolded across Sunday with the subjectiveness and the nonsense and the contradictions. Certainly that gone. It's all about the Kali Matrix, though.
So your one rule is always follow the Kali Matrix. I like it.
Hey, I think they were right, though, weren't they? They had the 4 teams.
I think they did.
So the human element has not worked. No, I mean, something along the lines, if you're going to have these conference championship games, if you win that, you advance, and if you lose, you're not out either. And then there's certainly whatever the G5, whatever that number is, they get an entry in there as well. They're heading in the right direction with the 12 spots, though, and the home games on the college campuses. So I could go on with this about getting rid of bowls too, but I'll stick to that.
I would say get rid of the cartel. I'm surprised Trace hasn't used those terms in a while since he's
that's an old term, Elo.
And the way you do that, add criteria. Every sport has criteria. If you win your conference, you're in, or etc. Just put criteria in. The 12 team kind of does that. But the problem we're going to have with the 12 teams is it's going to be pretty much the Big Ten SEC Invitational. I would also remove Vince McMahon from the committee because clearly he had a big role in the Sunday selections of Alabama pulling off a Bret Hart screw job there somehow, maneuvering pieces. Yeah, have criteria so we at least understand what do you got to do to get in.
Elo with a bunch of name drops. All right, here's the next one. All right. Imagine UCF's hosting a high-profile recruit, maybe a transfer portal guy, maybe a high school guy. They're hosting a high-profile recruit on campus, and you can only bring one former UCF player to talk to that recruit. Who do you want to bring to talk to the recruit, Eric? High-profile recruit. You get one former player to come talk to him. Who do you want that person to be?
Is the player an offensive player or defensive player?
I can't. Who knows? We need help everywhere. We need help everywhere, Eric.
All right, because I do think if it's an offensive player, I would say I would bring in somebody like a Blake Bortles, who's a local guy, knows UCF inside out. If it's a defensive player, no brainer. Shaquille Griffin.
Trace, who you trotting in, Trace?
Gabe Davis, because I think he's the hottest name in the NFL right now and has always shown the work ethic. Plus, he stays connected to UCF, and I think younger kids know who he is. Shaquem Griffin. That story transcends his time with the Knights and is an appeal.
All right, let's get silly. Final one here. Trace, I know how much you love bowl season. Any number of bowls these days where we dump some sort of inanimate object on a coach, which I always think is fun. So, Trace, if you had your wish, if you could have any bowl named after any company, any brand, any product, what bowl would you want to see? Thinking in mind that maybe you have to douse the coach in this after the game. What fictitious bowl would you want?
Oh, goodness. Oh, I don't know. You do come up with some silly questions. I like eating gummy bears, so I like to see a ton of those poured over Gus Malzahn in the Gummy Bear Bowl.
I like the Gummy Bear Bowl. That's a good one. Hilo, what do you got? What's your bowl idea?
I'm going to go opposite of Trace, who criticized you. I'm going to compliment you.
Thank
Sons of UCF bowl. Hello. If Jimmy Kimmel can have a bowl.
What are we dumping on him, though?
Brian W. Peterson.
I'm sure we can find around. Can bet him some of the Sons of UCF hats. We got to wear a hat. It's a merchandise. I think we can do some stuff there. A kingdom crown. Do that.
I think Hilo wins this one, but I really like Gummy Bears, Trace.
All right. Thank you, Adam. We'll check back with you soon.
You mentioned, obviously, Trace, of course. The portal. UCF has lost some portals, headlined by Corey Thornton, who entered the portal on Tuesday night. Brett Davis, Drake Metcalf, Jordan McDonald, Jalen Griffin, Tyler Griffin. So far as we talk and record this show are in the portal. Who's the bigger loss and you're going to miss the most there, Trace?
Just from a personality standpoint, Jordan McDonald, who I would have liked to have seen develop, but where can he get the touches? But the best player on the list, most impactful, is Corey Thornton, who had a good year. Again, though, most teams were successful in running the ball against UCF, didn't really have to test the corners. So, I don't know. He may go that Devontae Brown route, and I think he's replaceable.
Wow. Corey Thornton, by the way, according to Pro Football Focus, rated the best defensive player on the UCF team, about a 76.6. So that's a significant.
Is that a great number, though?
For this defense, it is. So, and listen, when did we ever say, defense quarterback? Nobody ever said anything about Corey Thornton. I thought he had a great year, his best year of his career. He'll do well. McDonald, I'm going to miss just because of what if, right? And unfortunately, here's this guy that was highly touted in the recruiting class, and we never got to see the full potential. And that's unfortunate. That's part of college athletics today, right? This is all this hype, Trace, with signing day, and then a year or two later, the guy moves on. It'll be interesting. A year or two from now, when Adam's on with us, is he going to tell us, hey, did you know Jordan McDonald's leading this in rushing? Or do we, does he disappear? I don't know. That's going to be interesting. But I'm going to miss that potential that could have been.
Of course, now we have announcements for guys who are leaving the program, guys who are coming to the program. How about announcements from guys who are staying? The announcement, the only one so far, offensive lineman Adrian Medley announcing he's returning. I will say, of all the announcements, I think him deciding to come back is the most impactful for UCF.
Well, it helps, right? In the offensive line, you're going to need as many guys back. That's going to be the big question this offseason among many on this roster because you do lose some personnel in the offensive line. Can they retool that offensive line? And, of course, one of the guys that's leaving is Drake Metcalf, who didn't really pan out here coming over from Stanford. So that's going to be interesting what Herb Hand and Gus have in mind for the line.
Of course, all of this, the transfer portal, early signing day, and then when you're in acquiring guys, all that now in this new age of college football requires money. And a question I asked of Coach Malzahn, Adam's going to play, asked him about, does UCF have enough money to be in this game?
Pete, do you feel you have the resources to compete?
We're still working on that. We're still working on that.
That's a telling remark there, isn't it, Elo? He didn't say, yes, we do.
Yeah, we're working on it. That was revealing. I thought you did a fantastic job with the question there, and I thought Gus was very candid, and I appreciated that as well. I know he was asked about the kingdom and everything. That's been a hot topic on social media there, but this is the new world of college football and college athletics, right? I mean, Gus is not hiding the fact, hey, we need money to compete. That's what he said during the press conference, and obviously with the news of Corey Thornton leaving, you wonder if that was in his mind with certain players he can't get because they don't have enough. This is a polarizing topic, Trace, because I sympathize with both sides on this. I sympathize with UCF and saying we need more money to compete with the SECs and the Big Tens of the world. I just don't know how realistic is it, especially when you're asking your donors who are repeatedly asked to donate more and more, and then there's people that are fans but can't afford it because they got to pay bills. It's a tough topic.
Well, you see it a lot in Major League Baseball, right? Small market, medium market, large market. I wonder how UCF shakes out in that, right? They're not the New York Yankees, LA Dodgers, Boston Red Sox, but are they the Kansas City Royals, Tampa Bay Devil Rays, or Tampa Bay Rays? Are they going to have to make do with a lot less?
I think they're the Rays. You could argue they've been the Rays for a while in football with the success with the coaches and everything like that. And that might be what they may have to do. They're going to have to decide which players can we keep and which players we just can't afford and let them go. And let me just say this real quick. Obviously, the focus is on football. I wrote about the lack of resources in basketball in March, which was polarizing topic. This is across the board in UCF. That's just a football issue. Basketball. How are we going to compete in the toughest conference in the Big 12 in basketball that spends the most money in NIL in basketball? This is a big problem for the whole department that there's no simple solutions.
Agreed.
All right, so there you go. We got no money. But what we do have, someone that is looking for money. Oh, yeah. He's back. Dillon Gabriel. He's back in the portal. Announced it on Monday. Trace, did we get the return of Dillon Gabriel here at UCF?
No. First of all, UCF doesn't have the money to pony up, and he would not be well received. You know, at some point, though, that is going to happen, right? A guy returns to a previous school, right? At some point in this mix. No, he is certainly entrepreneurial. I'll give him that. I don't know that he came off well in that ESPN Plus series, and that's left a mark with the fan base. But he's certainly entrepreneurial. And you can argue, right? He may pursue a pro career and may end up in a USFL or one of these leagues, but I don't see him as an NFL guy. We'll see if he surprises us on that. He's going to make more money playing college football, though.
Well, and he might be like the first test of all these players that are going to move from school to school to make money in college because they know they don't really have a future in the pros. So why not make as much as you can? And in his case, he's probably going to go out west, if I had to guess, an Oregon or USC that's going to probably pay six figures. So this is part of the college. But you make a great point. I think you will see at some point down the road a UCF player that leaves and then maybe comes back. I think it's important for coaches to maintain those relationships because it might come back full circle. Coaches have always talked about this in the recruiting standpoint. We might start seeing that on the field.
Well, it certainly happens in the pros, right? They return to a team they were previously at. So you don't think he ends up at Mississippi State because they don't pony up the dollars? He doesn't chase the dollars and rejoin Jeff Lebby?
I think they'll try, but I don't think they could spend the money compared to a USC or an Oregon. And I think Dillon wants to go back, finish off on the West Coast. And think about it. USC, Lincoln Riley, all the quarterbacks that have gone on to the NFL. Look at Bo Nix and how his stock's gone up at Oregon with Nike. I think he ends up at one of those two schools.
Hey, wasn't he at UCLA for a minute?
A couple minutes. Then,
yeah, so maybe that'll be the first case of going back.
Maybe.
Around the Big 12, we talked about it all year. Texas, they end up cruising over Oklahoma State. What was your big takeaway in that one? Oklahoma State not very competitive in it at all.
Nope. Oklahoma State looked about as great as they looked against UCF, Trace, except there was no storm in Dallas. Look, Texas obviously dominated Oklahoma State to get themselves to the playoff, although Texas should probably thank Alabama to be in the playoff because I think if Georgia beats Alabama in the SEC title game, Brett Yormark in the Big 12 is shut out of the playoff. But because Texas beat Alabama, I think they were going to get in that scenario, thanks to Vince McMahon. But I think that overall for the Big 12, the big question I have is you got all these bowl games that the teams are in. How are they going to do in the bowl games? How good is this league, Trace? Because Oklahoma, there was the second highest ranked team was Oklahoma. And then what? Oklahoma State did not
Kansas
finish
State.
strong. Yeah, who's barely in the top 25. They'll be in Orlando. I think there's some questions moving forward. How is the Big 12 going to be looked at in a 12-team playoff?
UCF, Georgia Tech. Does it make your best bowl matchup in this Big 12?
No, Oklahoma-Arizona is. Oklahoma-Arizona is going to be a really good game. Arizona, remember, it's a team that's going to come to the Big 12 next year. They play Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. I think they're going to be really good.
Put me down for Texas-Washington. I think you missed that easy one. Texas-Washington to beat.
The game is, by the way, in New Orleans. It's like a de facto home game for Texas. It's unbelievable.
All right, does UCF, Georgia Tech make your worst bowl list?
No, whoever Texas Tech's playing, it's got to be the worst, right? Trace, you could agree with that.
They're playing Cal.
Wait,
California of the ACC?
That's right. Nothing like Big 12 ACC football.
What about Memphis, Iowa State in the Liberty?
How about Memphis getting a home game out of that for them? I mean, good Lord.
Yeah.
Liberty Bowl there against Iowa State, who probably overachieved a little bit in the Big 12.
All right, let's run out of time on hoops. Let's go back to Adam with some corrections and some facts that, clean things up a bit.
All right, here's what I got for you, gentlemen. First of all, Georgia Tech and UCF, they've played 5 times. Georgia Tech leads that series 3-2. All 3 wins from Georgia Tech came under the helm of one George O'Leary. So FYI for that. UCF obviously back in Tampa for the Gasparilla Bowl. 5 bowls UCF has played in Tampa St. Pete, 3-2 overall in those 5 bowls. Elo, you were talking about attendance. Since the Gasparilla Bowl has moved to Raymond James Stadium in 2017, here are the attendance numbers. In 2017, they drew 16,000. 2018, they drew 14,000. That's with the Cows playing in that game, by the way. 2019,
they drew 14 in a home bowl game.
That's correct. I'm shocked that number should be lower.
Wow.
2019, UCF played there. They drew 28. No bowl in 2021, UCF Florida 63,000. 2022, which featured Wake Forest and Missouri, 34,000. So we'll see where we're at in that. Obviously, the marks of late have been pretty high, but UCF 28K when we played Marshall in the Gasparilla Bowl. Dylan Gabriel, a lot of reports coming out on social media that he's going to see Oregon this weekend and that UCF is to like a word. And some breaking news while we've been talking on the show, gentlemen. On3 Sports is reporting that former Coastal Carolina quarterback Grayson McCall will visit UCF this weekend. So another quarterback will be on campus per On3 Sports. McCall had a great career at Coastal Carolina. Obviously, led the Chanticleers to some pretty illustrious seasons there. So allegedly he will be on campus per On3 Sports this weekend.
Interesting names in the mix. Thank you, Adam. Adam, Elo, how well do you know the Gasparilla Bowl and its history? Elo, the inaugural Magic Jack St. Petersburg Bowl happened in 2008. Then it became the St. Petersburg Bowl presented by Beef O'Brady's, then just the Beef O'Brady's Bowl. One season is the Bitcoin St. Petersburg Bowl, then just the St. Petersburg Bowl for 2 seasons when obviously they couldn't find a corporate sponsor. Then they moved to Tampa. Do you remember this one? It became the Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl. And since 2020, the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. That is how we play. How well do you know your Gasparilla Bowl history? Elo, thank you. Look for new episodes midweek every week on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. Also, it drops in the audio form on the Sons podcast feed. For Adam, for Elo, I'm Trace Trylko. Thanks for joining us for Around the Kingdom.